I stepped into the library and stopped counting. 217 shelves stood completely bare. Outside, my 10-year-old daughter Ivy waited in the car, finishing a turkey sandwich. I told her to wait while I grabbed a file. I grabbed nothing. Nothing remained. The air smelled wrong. Vanilla and dust. Not paper. Not leather. Not Cordelia's beeswax polish. I approached the mahogany chair. The cushion was cold. On the seat sat one invoice. Howaren and Sons Rare Books. Dated last Tuesday. Total, $165,000. Seller, Richard Boyd. My father initialed every page. I felt no panic. I turned the lock. One empty room. 28 guests waiting to celebrate. The silence that followed cost them the house. It began 11 days prior, with a text reading things handled. I am 34. My title is head archivist at the Whitfield Research Library. Ivy is 10. She understands provenance because Cordelia taught her. Great-grandmother Cordelia established the Heritage Library Foundation in January 2008. She transferred 217 first editions to the trust and placed them on permanent loan to Ivy. The arrangement secured a conditional property tax exemption worth $30,000 annually. In exchange, the collection remained untouched in the East Wing. For 14 months, my mother Margaret treated this agreement like a suggestion. At every holiday dinner, she dismissed the volumes. Just collecting dust in that creepy old room, she would say. My father Richard never corrected her. He simply nodded and changed the subject. Their approval required a specific arithmetic. I watched them measure success in surround sound and leather recliners. I measured it in acid-free folders and chain of custody. Neither math canceled the other out. I told myself their dismissal was harmless. I told myself paper outlasts opinions. I buried myself in conservation reports because documents do not argue back. They do not give you the silent treatment. I let the comments accumulate. I let the quiet complicity harden into routine. I assumed stewardship would protect us. I was wrong. Stewardship only works when people respect the inventory. My mother respected square footage. She respected renovation budgets. I packed for a retreat and left them alone with the shelves. That was my quiet mistake. The retreat at Lake Willoughby runs 9 days. It is mandatory for senior staff. Before I left, Margaret offered to check on the house. She framed it as a kindness, a favor to ensure the furnace pilot didn't falter. I agreed. 2 days later, a text arrived. We've got things handled. No greeting. No warmth. Just the phrasing. I read it 3 times while watching Ivy roast a marshmallow past its limit. The sentence felt like a task list. My profession is built on attribution. I know the difference between preservation and clearance. I filed the sentence away. Ivy finished 4 library paperbacks by day 5. She filled a sketchbook with waterfowl and lake reeds. On the 7th night, lying in her sleeping bag with a flashlight still on, she whispered, "Great-grandma would have liked this lake." I held her while she slept, feeling the weight of Cordelia's absence. I should have called home. I should have questioned the phrasing. But I told myself I was overanalyzing. That was my error. I trusted the silence. I don't ignore phrasing. In my line of work, things handled is never a favor. It's a checklist. The drive back took 2 hours. I used the silence to file overdue grants mentally. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch light burned against the sky. Mail stacked against the door. 5 days accumulated. My parents' car was gone. I retrieved the spare key from beneath the third flagstone, the exact spot Cordelia designated in 1974. No one had moved it. The hallway felt unnervingly pristine. Parallel vacuum tracks cut across the runner rug. A vanilla candle flickered on the counter. My mother only lit that specific candle to mask another odor. I walked toward the east wing. 11 steps. I counted them automatically. The library door stood wide open. The overhead fluorescent hummed. Cordelia had forbidden overhead lighting for decades. She knew it degraded bindings. Someone flipped the switch and walked away. I stepped across the threshold. The air smelled of chemical vanilla and settled dust. Not paper. Not leather. Not aged ink. I looked up. 217 slots stood completely bare. Faint rectangular shadows marked where spines had rested for years. The mahogany chair sat by the south window. The cushion held a single folded document. I picked it up. My hands remained steady. Hauer'n and Sons Rare Books. Manhattan. Dated 5 days earlier. Total, $165,000. Seller, Richard Boyd. Page 4 bore Margaret's signature as witness. The transaction included photographic documentation and a certified deposit. I set it down. Small footsteps echoed behind me. Ivy stood in the doorway. She looked past me at the third shelf, where the green leather volume lived for 11 years. She did not cry. She turned and walked back down the hall. 10 years old, and she understood before I spoke. I sat in the cold chair. I stopped grieving. I started counting. Dates. Deeds. Recovery timelines. Permanent loans exist for a reason. So people don't sell what isn't theirs and call it spring cleaning. That night, I opened the foundation folder. 22 pages. I turned to section 7. Recapture. The language was precise. Any unauthorized disposition triggers full back tax assessment from the inception year, plus statutory interest and a 75% penalty. I called Evelyn Marsh at 6 in the morning. She answered on the second ring. I read the clause aloud. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she delivered the arithmetic. $412,000 in federal recapture. $30,000 annually in state property reassessment. A federal tax lien attached to the deed. The house became mathematically untenable. I hung up. My hands were steady. I emailed David Hauer'n. I cited the permanent loan agreement and requested immediate return. He replied within the hour. Cooperation confirmed. He would hold the collection pending written authorization. I spent the afternoon drafting 3 documents. A cease and desist to my parents. An IRS Form 8283 amendment. A state recapture notice for the town assessor. I signed each one. I sealed each envelope. I could have delivered them immediately. I chose restraint. I scheduled the hand delivery for Friday at 5. I knew banks closed at 4. I knew no judge would issue an injunction over the weekend. I knew my parents would spend Saturday searching for attorneys who would not answer. The unveiling party was that afternoon. 30 guests. A home theater funded by stolen equity. I would attend. I would let the documents speak. Truth doesn't need an audience. But sometimes it needs a mirror held up in a room full of witnesses. Saturday afternoon arrived with deceptive warmth. Vanessa's driveway held 14 cars. White streamers adorned the mailbox. A hand-lettered sign welcomed guests to movie night. Through the front window, champagne flutes glinted on a silver tray. My mother's finest tablecloth covered the dining surface. A banner reading the Reeves Family Theater grand opening hung above the fireplace. Inside, 28 guests mingled. Tyler and Dylan occupied leather recliners still wrapped in plastic. A red and yellow popcorn machine hummed in the corner. I arrived with Ivy at 3:45. Nathan Pell stepped beside us, carrying a leather briefcase with a brass clasp. Inside lay 15 copies of the permanent loan deed. Brent opened the screen door. His grin collapsed when he registered Nathan's suit. "Hey, Danny. Glad you came around." "I haven't, Brent." My mother materialized from the kitchen, drying her hands. She saw the pearls around my neck. "Cordelia's pearls." "Danielle, please. Let's get coffee. We can work this out." I kept my voice low. "The party isn't the problem, Mom. 8 years of pretending Cordelia's wishes were optional. That was the problem." The room quieted. 30 faces turned toward us. Vanessa stepped forward, champagne flute raised. "She is an old woman with too many books." I did not raise my voice. I simply asked everyone to gather in the living room. "There is a document I would like to read. It will take 4 minutes. Then I will leave." They celebrated the finish. I was still reading the foundation. The living room held 30 faces. Champagne flutes paused midair. I held the deed, 22 pages stapled with the foundation seal. My voice remained even. I read the preamble. Cordelia and Boyd. The Heritage Library Foundation. The beneficiary, Ivy Boyd, age 10, with sole veto authority. I turned to page 14. Section 7. Recapture. Any unauthorized disposition triggers full back tax assessment from 2010 forward, plus statutory interest and a 75% penalty. I looked up. My mother's coffee mug slipped from her hand. It hit the rug without breaking. Coffee spread in a dark oval. She did not look down. Vanessa snapped, "She is ruining my children's party over old books." Ivy stood beside me. Her hand rested on her backpack strap. She spoke clearly, without rehearsal. "Aunt Vanessa, you didn't buy the theater. My books did." The room held its breath. I could hear the popcorn machine cycling through the French doors. I placed my hand on Ivy's shoulder. She did not flinch. I addressed the room. "Tyler and Dylan did nothing wrong. They are not part of what comes next." I turned to my mother. "The collection was never theirs to sell." I said it softly, the way Cordelia taught me to handle fragile things. Nathan opened the briefcase. He placed 15 copies of the deed on the coffee table. 3 neighbors picked one up. 2 of my mother's church friends took one. Pastor Mike took 2. Children don't lie about ownership. They only repeat what adults try to hide. I took Ivy's hand. We walked out the front door and across the lawn without raising my voice. Nathan followed. 21 days later, 11 archival crates arrived. Climate controlled. Fully insured. Ivy reshelved every volume herself. She saved the green leather wind in the willows for last. She carried it to the 3rd shelf, slid it into place, and sat in the mahogany chair. Her feet still didn't touch the floor. She opened the cover and traced the bookplate. "For Ivy, who will keep them safe." The foundation voted to relocate the collection to the Whitfield Research Library. They named it the Ivy Boyd Reading Room. The mahogany chair followed. My parents sold the house at auction. After the lien cleared, they netted enough for a condo. My father sends a monthly card. I read them. I do not write back. Setting a boundary with the people who raised you doesn't mean you stopped loving them. It means you finally learned how to protect what they tried to erase. Some homes look perfect until you check the deed. I'd rather live in a quiet truth than a loud illusion. Subscribe if you've ever been called impractical for refusing to pretend.